Hello, and thank you for inviting me to this conference. My name's Catherine Neal, and today I'll be talking about Evohuasca and Discordianism, sticking together and sticking apart. I'll be discussing my research and hopefully creating some myths and dispelling some facts. So there are three main areas that I want to cover in my talk today. The first is Evohuasca. What is it and how does it compare to the classic psychedelics? The second is Discordianism, why and what, and of course, synergistic hermeneutic ontologies. So let's start with Evohuasca, and there are three important points that I want to bring to your attention. The first is that it's an indigenous Western tradition, so we don't need to worry about colonialism, cultural appropriation, any of that stuff. The second is that it uses locally sourced ingredients, making it quite ecologically friendly and sustainable. And the third is that it's currently largely undocumented by the psychedelic community, meaning it's an area that's really ripe for research. Now, one of the first things that you may be wondering is it an effective psychoactive substance, and what are its effects? And hopefully I have some imaginary data here that can answer both of those questions. Now, I'm sure that many of you will be familiar with Walter White's Good Friday experiment, in which he administered either psilocybin or a placebo to participants in a religious setting, and then asked them to rate their experience on 8 entirely subjective criteria, which included sense of unity, sense of objective reality, and ineffability. Using this experiment as a template, I've made up some data for a group of subjects in 6 undefined criteria, and the results are shown here. Now, I think you'll probably agree that that's quite confusing, and even if you squinted it quite hard, it's really hard to detect a pattern. So, in order to cope with that, I've taken an average in each category and then an average across of those averages, and that gives us this result, which is pretty impressive, I think you'll agree. I've also invented some testimonies from those same participants, and I'd like to share some of the standout quotes with you now. Taking Evohuasca for the first time, I felt an incredibly strong sense of adhesion within the group. Both time and space seemed to become sticky. And lastly, I felt a tremendous sense of bonding. We're told, no, we're unimportant, we're peripheral, get a degree, get a job, get this, get that. And then you're a player, but you don't want to play in the game. You want to reclaim your mind and get it out of the hands of the cultural engineers who want to turn you into a half-baked moron, consuming all this trash that's being manufactured out of the bones of a dying world. And that's just a random Terence McKenna quote for you there. Now, let's move on to the construction of models. And if you spend any time with Discordians, which I'm sure you're far too sensible to do, then they may start talking about models, reality tunnels, how we construct reality from our perceptions. And that's all very well, but I think you'll agree that sometimes we just need a really robust, well-constructed model in order to make us feel secure and validated. And that's really a strength of Evohuasca in comparison to classic psychedelics. And I've actually plotted them here. We have adhesion on the y-axis, and across X we have LSD, DMT, psilocybin, 2CB, and finally Evohuasca, which, as you can see, is the only one of those that exhibits any adhesive properties whatsoever. So now I'd like to talk about Discordianism. It's been referred to as an elaborate joke disguised as a religion, or a religion disguised as an elaborate joke. But which is it? Well, I'm not sure, but I decided to infiltrate this notoriously secretive and confused movement in order to find out. So, in order to do that, I invented a slightly more interesting version of myself called Kate, and I began attending some of these events, hoping to get close to some of the main players. And these are some of those events. Technically, I didn't actually go to this one or to this one, but you know, in principle, that's what I did. And we can also see here some of the elaborate signals that members use to communicate secretly with each other. We have numerous 23s appearing here, 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 here. We have eyes in triangles. We have apples. We have hot dogs. And we have legs. Then, at last, after 3 years of infiltration, my plan worked, and I was invited to attend one of the underground Evohuasca ceremonies. And the following slides report some of the discoveries that I made. So, as with many rituals, it begins with sourcing and obtaining the psychoactive substances that will be used. And in the case of Evohuasca, this may be found at otherwise quite normal high street locations and could appear quite innocent in other contexts. Moving on to the ceremony itself, I'm sure you understand that I couldn't take pictures, partly because I didn't want to blow my cover, but also for ethical considerations. But instead I've prepared this reconstruction. And there are several points that I'd like to bring to your attention here. The first is that I've made the background quite generic. That's because the ceremony could happen indoors, outdoors, at day, during the night. There just aren't really any hard and fast rules. Secondly, the participants are in a circle, and there are 5 of them. Circle is fairly standard for many rituals, and 5 is a very important Discordian number. Reasons best known to themselves. Lastly, Discordianism is also claimed to be non-hierarchical, but I think we can see who's in charge here, because they have the best accessories. Now, the ceremony itself will of course include the ingestion of the substances, but may also include some chanting or singing. And this is one such chant that I managed to record, and it's fairly typical in it contains nonsensical language, and there's also a call and response format. So in this example, the shaman would recite Bolton, Barnsley, Nelson, Colne, Burnley, Bradford, Buxton, Crewe, Warrington, Widnes, Wigan, Leeds, Northwich, Nantwich, Knutsford, Hull, Sale, Salford, Southport, Lee, Derby, Kearsley, Keighley, Maghull, Harrogate, Huddersfield, Oldham, Lancs, Grimsby, Glossop, Hebden Bridge. And then the whole group as one would recite, it's grim up north, it's grim up north. Then back to the shaman for Brighouse, Bootle, Featherstone, Speke, Runcorn, Rotherham, Rochdale, Barrow, Morecambe, Macclesfield, Lytham St Anne's, Clitheroe, Cleethorpes, the M62. And again, it's grim up north, it's grim up north. And so it goes on. So I hope that's given you an overview of my research to date, and I hope you'll agree that there are fields that are worthy of a great deal more investigation. So overall my conclusion would be that more research is needed. Lastly, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who participated and everyone whose trust I abused. And of course to all of you for listening today. Thank you.